Okay. All right, we are ready to go. So the Jackson County Rock Island corridor is a critical part of Bike Walk KC's long-term vision to see Kansas City directly connected with Katy Trail State Park. We celebrated the opening of the first phase a year ago, and we're looking forward to the second phase opening soon. But this is not just a trail. It's an important spine of the MetroGreen Regional Trail Network, and it's also a corridor that is being preserved for future rapid transit, connecting southeast suburbs to the heart of the city. And that's something we're very excited about. I would like to introduce our executive director at Bike Walk KC. This is Eric Rogers, and he'll take it away.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you for everybody that's here today. We've got a big group and we're happy to see everybody here virtually. I'm really excited today to have Matt Davis with us in this next installment of our series of virtual events that we're bringing you to learn more about what's going on around the region, dive into some projects that are happening, and get more information out about all the great, exciting transportation things that are happening around Kansas City. Matt Davis is the Rock Island project manager for Jackson County Parks Plus Rec. He's a planner there at Jackson County. I'm really excited to have Matt here because for many of you may know Matt. He's been around the local active living, healthy eating community for a long time in Kansas City. He was our very first employee at Bike Walk KC for our bike share program. I think back in 2012, 2013. He's also worked at a lot of other great organizations around the region, KC Healthy Kids, Mid-America Regional Council, KC, and many more. And many of you have probably just seen him out on bikes around Kansas City. So I'm really excited to welcome Matt here. I'm going to ask Matt to share his screen so that we can see a few slides and see some of the great work that's going on around the trail corridor while we're chatting. So Matt, please feel free to share your screen if you're able to.
All right.
Okay, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of background about the project, and then share all this information. And then when Matt is done with the slides here, we will open it up for some conversation and questions. Take it away, Matt.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me here this afternoon, Eric. I really appreciate it. And thank you to the rest of the Bike Walk KC team for putting these on. I think these are fantastic, informal, but very, very informational sessions that, folks in the community can learn a lot from. And so I appreciate being a part of that. Proud Bike Walk KC alumni, very happy to have worked with Eric and others at Bike Walk KC, both as an actual employee almost a decade ago, and also through advocacy and other just community projects and events. So I love the stuff you guys do, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. As Liz mentioned, we had our grand opening. Before I go on real quick, I'm going to try and do this from my front porch. So we may have a little bit of background noise. If something happens that gets too loud out here, I may pause and go inside real quick. So just wanted to cover that before I get going here. As I was saying, Liz mentioned that we cut the ribbon on our south phase, which is about half of the Rock Island Trail. We cut that ribbon on June 1st of 2019. So just a little bit over a year ago. We just had our 1-year anniversary of the trail. This is an image from that event. Very, very well attended. Great celebration from, with a lot of folks in our community. Obviously this has been something it's been in the works for a long, long time. And so people are very excited about it. And we saw that excitement at that event. That excitement continues to build through our current project, and hopefully we'll be done before too long and we can cut another ribbon. Just some kind of basic facts about the corridor, and I'm going to go into more detail about some of these later. But basic facts: the Rock Island corridor is 17.7 miles long and 347 acres. It is a multimodal transportation corridor. That's the vision, and I'll get into it a little bit more. But we have partnered in this project with Kansas City Area Transportation Authority to acquire the corridor and develop it. The trail component is going to be 13.5 miles long. The current southern terminus is Jefferson Street in Southern Lee Summit, and the northern terminus will be near Lot L at the Truman Sports Complex. And I'll have some more details. We recently rail banked this corridor, meaning that we took it out of the national freight network and put it into what's known as trail use or rail banking. And what that does is it essentially takes the Rock Island corridor out of the freight network. So freight returning to the corridor is no longer something that we need to be concerned about. It also allows us to move forward with a better legal status that lends itself to building trails, building transit within these corridors. This is what the Katy Trail has been through. This is what, essentially all other, rails to trails projects in our nation have been through this. So it's a very common practice. We were glad to get it done so that we could move forward in a way that kind of puts us in a better position for the trail project. Sorry, I wasn't quite done there. We also view this as a regional trail spine to connect into a number of other trail systems in our county. And it will also be the Kansas City Katy Trail connection. So, understanding that folks will be coming in from the eastern part of the state, once they get here, they can kind of connect to those other trail systems and travel around our region and really have a very connected trail system. And so we see this as a vital part of that trail system. So a little bit on schedule. Our phase 1 project is the southern half. And if you view the map on the right side of the screen here, you can see the label Brickyard Road there is kind of right in the middle. That segment from Brickyard Road to Jefferson Street is what is completed. Again, we cut the ribbon June 1, 2019. That segment is 6.4 miles. It's open, being very heavily used right now. If you haven't been out on it, I highly recommend going to check it out. There are some very cool components of it. The Vale Tunnel being one of them, which goes underneath Bannister Road. It is a 465-foot long, 30-foot tall railroad tunnel built in 1903. It is lit, and we have paved the floor, so it's very accessible. It does feel safe. The lights are motion activated, so as soon as you go in, if the lights are off, you enter the tunnel on your bicycle or walking, and those lights come on. It's a very, very neat place on the trail, and I highly recommend folks check it out. To the south of there's also some great places to see. We go over the Little Blue River. We go under I-470. And continue on. There's a very beautiful valley that we traveled through. So if you haven't been out there, please do go check it out. Phase 2 of the project is currently under construction. This is from Brickyard Road north to the Truman Sports Complex. This segment is 7.1 miles. It's mislabeled in that image to the right where it says 6.9. It is actually 7.1 miles and will terminate at Lot L, which is kind of the southeast lot at the stadium complex, kind of an overflow lot for Arrowhead. Future phases include the Greenwood Connector, which is what we are calling our connection to the Katy Trail. We have a phase coming up in fiscal year 21 and 22 that will get us about an additional 1.5 miles from Jefferson Street to Hamblin Road in Southern Lee Summit. We do plan on having a small parking lot trailhead at Hamblin Road as part of that project. We've also gone out for additional funding, federal funding, for what would be phase 3 or phase 2 of Greenwood Connector, depending on your perspective. But this would go from that Hamblin Road trailhead south into Greenwood. And we don't know, we're still in the application process for that, so there's a little bit of time before we will know if we've qualified for funding on that piece. But once the final application is submitted, we'll certainly share with folks in the community, so that if you are supportive of that project, you can weigh in and let the folks at MARC know how much that means to the community. Another trail connection that we are working toward in those same years, FY 21 and 22, is the Little Blue Trace Connector. And that will go from, it'll actually be north of the Vale Tunnel, between the Vale Tunnel and Brickyard Road. And it will connect across the Little Blue River and using George Road to access kind of the Little Blue Park area. It's the old Raytown Racetrack, I believe, which is now a park where there's some baseball fields and some other amenities. So that's what we're working on right now. Phase 2, we have in our calendar availability for that to go into January. Our contractors are moving pretty quickly, and I would be surprised if they did not complete the project early. With that said, it's probably early winter is kind of what I'm thinking. So hopefully we'll have a completed trail, from Truman Sports Complex out to Jefferson Street by the end of 2020. So trailheads are a major focus of the project. In the first kind of iteration, in this first project we're working on, they're going to be somewhat basic. They're going to be essentially parking, some amenities, minor amenities, and that's really it. We have planned for 6 trailheads. One of those has actually been pulled out of the project, which is the Brickyard Road trailhead. However, we do have kind of an unofficial trailhead at the Raytown Chamber of Commerce. Vicki Turnbow, who has been a great supporter of our project, is doing some really cool things that they're building to make it welcoming for trail users. So that'll be kind of our 6th and maybe an unofficial trailhead for the Rock Island. And as I mentioned, the trailheads will be pretty basic in their first iteration. They'll have signage, a little bit of wayfinding, bike racks, some historical information on that signage. Of course, they'll have parking, and typically we put like a porta potty type of restroom there. We hope to, over time, enhance these trailheads through partnerships with, whether it's community groups, businesses, our local municipalities. We'd like to see bike share on the corridor. Obviously, trailheads would be a great place for docks, although I know we are moving to more of a dockless model. But yeah, we would like to see these areas kind of develop over time through creative partnerships and finding ways for the community to get involved and kind of take some ownership. And we're excited to work with them and see how we can make these trailheads really interesting and vibrant places. A lot of these trailheads have they're kind of bigger areas in the corridor. So We have some additional space to work with. And, one kind of secondary or maybe even third goal of the project is to create some economic development opportunities. And we see these areas as an opportunity for that to occur. So what you see here in this image on top is an image that was put together for the Railroad Street area, which is in downtown Raytown, north of 63rd Street. We will have a trailhead there. It's where Crane Brewing Company is, if you're familiar with that. If you're not and you like beer, I would suggest checking them out. They make incredible beer, and it's sold all around our region in beer stores. So check them out. That'll be a great stop for folks on a hot summer day like today. So getting in a little bit more to the trail connections, the image you see on the right is a map depicting the MetroGreen trail system in Jackson County. The solid green lines are completed trails, and the dotted green lines are planned but not completed. Some of this is a little bit outdated. Some of these dotted green lines have been kind of filled, some of these gaps have been filled in, small pieces, but the majority of it still needs to be built out. On kind of the eastern side, closer to where it says Unity Village there, that is the Little Blue Trace Trail. That trail is designed to follow the Little Blue River. Currently, you can pick that up in Independence and go, I think it's 14 miles from end to end. The goal there would be to connect it down through the Rock Island and eventually out to Longview Lake. So if we're able to get that done, that's going to be a fantastic kind of similar, very long trail connecting a lot of interesting and vibrant places in our community. To the far left of the screen, the trolley trail. See if I can get my cursor to go over it. This is the trolley trail, and then here you have the Brush Creek Trail. This is an area that we would like to connect into to get folks into the plaza and over towards State Line. We would like to do this. We've actually walked the alignment for this a couple of times with folks from Kansas City, Missouri, and Independence and other places. I think some folks from Bike Walk KC even joined for that. It's going to be a challenging alignment. There's no really easy or obvious way to do that, but we're gonna continue to work on it and look for ways to fund that over the coming years. So yeah, you can kind of see where the trail connections are, and we just need to work both internally at Jackson County, but also with our kind of our municipal partners and our other nonprofit partners like Bike Walk KC to help lay the groundwork for some of these trail connections. I know a lot of people are interested in hearing about how we're going to get to the Katy Trail, so I've got a couple slides on that. Again, as I mentioned with the connection to Brush Creek, kind of a challenging area. A little bit of history here. The Union Pacific, when we were in negotiations with the Union Pacific, they were not willing to sell the right-of-way past Hamblin Road in southern Lee Summit. So we had initially hoped that we were going to be able to acquire the Rock Island right-of-way all the way to Pleasant Hill, and it became apparent that that was not going to happen. And so it didn't. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You keep what you can get and you do what you can with it, and that's what we're doing. So our trail ending where it does currently near Hamlin Road. We're just gonna continue to find alternatives to get through to Pleasant Hill, and I'll have a little bit more on that alignment in my next slide. But the Katy Trail obviously is a very important state park for the state of Missouri. It sees about 400,000 visitors per year, And that number is from a 2012 economic impact study. So it's a little bit outdated, but still good numbers. That economic impact study found that the Katy Trail contributed $10 million in spending that was directly related to trail use, and over 300 jobs. So obviously, easy to make a case for the Katy Trail in the state of Missouri. And connecting Kansas City to St. Louis bolsters that, and we think would significantly impact those numbers. That same economic impact study looked at indirect spending. So that's kind of, when a restaurant might buy additional food because they think they're going to have more customers over a certain period of time. And that indirect spending took the 10 million all the way up to 18 million. So it's clear that trails do have a strong economic impact, both on a local level and a state level. A lot of the beneficiaries of the Katy Trail are smaller communities in central Missouri. They were railroad towns that really depended on the railroad for their well-being. And as those railroads went away, it kind of hurt their quality of life and hurt their ability to kind of generate economic activity. So trails are a great way to kind of replace some of that. Getting on to the connection. So a few years ago, we did a pretty thorough planning exercise with a number of our municipal partners, including Kansas City, Lee Summit, Greenwood. I think Grandview even came to one. We had MoDOT, Missouri Department of Conservation was involved, and we looked at a number of different routes to get us to Pleasant Hill through Greenwood. And the one on the right that you see here is kind of what emerged as the best case scenario. This is, so I mentioned segment 1 and segment 2. Segment 1 is what we'll be building in fiscal year 21 and 22. We had initially applied for both of these segments, but we're only successful getting segment 1. So we'll be working on getting that built, and then hopefully we'll be successful in our current application, and we'll get funding for segment 2. These would both be a traditional trail. So, either a chat or crushed limestone trail on top of the rail bed, or a concrete side path where the trail runs along Hamblin Road. At that white dot at the very bottom of the screen, on the left side of the screen there, that's where you get into Greenwood, where you have more residential homes. Here we were kind of considering more of a cycle track or bicycle boulevard type of application, utilizing areas where there was existing sidewalk. So pedestrians could use a sidewalk, cyclists could use a cycle track. And we would kind of model that through Greenwood as much as possible, and kind of cross over the railroad tracks and over Big Creek there on Mo 150 using a side path. And then again, cutting straight south. If you're on the right side of the screen, you can kind of see where we turn to the south, and then get down to the Mopac Trail, which then leads to Pleasant Hill, where you can get on the Katy Trail extension. So this is kind of our vision. Speaking purely from the Jackson County perspective, I think our goal is to have a more traditional trail approach and cycle track approach with utilizing existing sidewalks. We want to make sure that what we are building and what we're striving for is accessible to people of all ages and abilities. I'm thinking, if my mom wants to take my daughter, out for a bike ride, are they going to be able to get through that area safely and not only safe from vehicles, but also do they feel safe? Do they feel comfortable being out there in that infrastructure that we built? And so that's kind of our biggest goal. In that planning process that I mentioned earlier, we did discuss on-street options and things like that, but being that those are not always comfortable, especially on country roads where people tend to drive fast, you may have truck traffic, things of that nature. It led us to understand that we really need to strive for that, safe, comfortable trail type amenity that we have in the rest of our trail system in Jackson County. This is a very, very challenging stretch. As I mentioned, about a little less than half of it is in Cass County. So that limits our ability to, affect change there, right? Because I can't, I'm not going to spend Jackson County dollars in Cass County, probably, unless there's some really good discussions between elected officials. So we've got to work with some partners, and we've got to find some, innovative solutions and acquire a lot of right of way as well. So there's some challenges to this. We continue to work on it. We're going to continue to work on it. This is obviously something that is critical. It's a goal that we've had since the outset of the Rock Island project. And just looking forward to when we can make that connection. So I'm going to kind of just go quickly. I feel like I'm going a little long here. So I'm going to go a little bit more quickly through these next few slides. As I mentioned at the very beginning, the corridor was acquired in partnership with the KCATA. We have designed the north half of the project to have quick implementation of a transit project. I think the end goal would be something like a light rail or commuter rail that would get from Lee Summit down to, I'm thinking 3rd and Grand, something like that, using the East Bottoms. Obviously, as our region continues to grow, traffic continues to be a problem. Highway expansion doesn't really get us that much. So what else can we do? And looking at the Rock Island as an option for high capacity transit is something that we want to make sure we don't lose focus of. And we're doing that by separating the existing center line of trail the existing center line of rail from the trail amenity. So in the north half of our project, about 80% of the trail is built at a minimum of 25 foot offset to either the west or the south, kind of depending on how you're oriented on the corridor. And I've got some images that will help depict this in just a moment. The southern half of our trail is built on top of the rail bed. The reason we did it this way is because KCATA has a vision for how they will build transit out. Their kind of first iteration of transit will be to Truman Sports Complex from Kansas City. That might be on Linwood. That might be some other way that we haven't considered yet. KCATA has done some high-level studies to look at this, and they continue to study it. So that's kind of your phase one, getting to Truman Sports Complex in downtown Raytown. This is kind of I'm going to just very loosely say probably like a 5 to 10 year time frame on phase one. Phase two gets you down to 470. And then phase three is out into Southern Lee Summit. I really view phase one and phase two as the most likely scenarios. Unless density grows, exponentially in Lee Summit, I don't think we're going to see the need to have it go farther south. Now, that could happen, but it's a ways away for sure. So with that, let me just get into a few pictures here. Took this image about a week ago. This is at Brickyard Road. This is all the rail from 350 Highway to Brickyard Road. And I just thought it was a cool image. Just wanted to share with everybody. This is near Irwin Road This is right on the Kansas City, Missouri, Raytown border. You can kind of see, not a great quality photo with my phone, but you can kind of see the long trail corridor there in the kind of the center left of the photo. This is the sign that we found near some homes that are adjacent to the Rock Island. I wanted to include this primarily to mention that it's always a very good idea to be respectful of the properties that are adjacent to the trail. You never know who you're going to run into on the other side of that fence or off the trail. So, we just always ask folks to stay on the trail and please be respectful of our neighbors. This is the 67th Street Bridge, which is just south of downtown Raytown. This is a double track bridge that is a little bit newer than the rest of the bridges on the corridor. I believe we're going to leave that rail to the left side of the image in so that folks can see it as they go by. What you see here kind of looks like a road. That will be the actual trail surface. Of course, we'll have some pedestrian fence up on the sides to protect people from falling off. But it should be a great bridge once it's all completed. This is a wall this is looking north toward downtown Raytown in the area known as Railroad Street. So kind of where that depiction of the trailhead I shared earlier is. Coming up onto Crane Brewing Company, this is going to be a very neat stretch of the trail. This is a little farther north of that. The trail will follow the curvature of this wall, and it will go underneath that bridge, right where you see kind of the square shape of that trestle bridge. So at that point, it'll go up on top of kind of where Raytown Trafficway is. It will proceed to 63rd Street, where we'll go under 63rd. This is getting into some of the first segment of trail that has been poured along the Rock Island corridor. This is the intersection of Raytown Trafficway and 59th Street. This is right in front of the Raytown Chamber of Commerce. Right ahead of you, you'll see some trail kind of veering off to the left. I think I've got an image of that, which I do here. So because we are off the rail bed in most of the northern section, a lot of the trail is going to be concrete. And that's because we're going to have more grades. There's going to be more ups and downs. It's not going to be totally flat. On the right side of this image, you'll see kind of a bridge. That's the old railroad bridge for the area. And that kind of level part on top is where the old rail was located. So when you're on top of the rail bed, you're always flat. You'll never exceed a 1% grade up or down. When we're off the rail bed, we're going to have some more kind of undulating trail surface. And you can kind of see this here as you look at the trail. You can kind of see that it kind of crests and then goes down and comes back up again. And again, to the right of this image, you can see where the rail used to be. This is just one of our first bridges that's going to be set. This bridge footing got poured the day that I was out taking pictures, so I wanted to go get a shot of it. Not much to see yet, but it will be soon. Another segment of trail, this is looking to the north from 47th Street. This is a long segment of trail. And again, you can see where the rail bed was off to the right. That's where the transit facility would go when KCATA is able to move that project forward. And finally, this is where the trailhead will put you out at the stadium complex. So as you come off the Rock Island Trail, you enter into Lot L. This is what you'll see. Arrowhead and the K, they're right in front of you. And we have had some preliminary discussions with the folks, the stadium complex folks, to, whether it's a trail, sidewalk, or maybe even signage, wayfinding, something to help direct folks from the trailhead down to kind of the M lot, or that area right between Arrowhead and the K, so that once you're there, you can go watch a ball game. Hopefully we'll have baseball back next year. So I think that's my final slide. So with that, I will finally stop talking and answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thanks, Matt. That was amazing. I am blown away by how much progress is happening, and just continually impressed by how many connections this is going to make in the community. I mean, it's going to connect Independence, Raytown, Country Club Plaza, Kansas City. It's really going to be an amazing thing when it's all open and available to all of us. I just want to follow up with a few quick notes and then let folks know, if you have questions for Matt, please put them in the chat box. We'll get to a few of them here, and then any of those that you submitted in advance or questions that we can't answer here today, we'll send a follow-up email with links and information. We'll try to answer as many of your questions after tonight as we can. I am personally really looking forward to that trailhead at Crane Brewing. Also really looking forward to the annual Bike to the Royals ride that we organize at Bike Walk AC, being able to do that on the trail soon, and then tailgate at the stadiums. I'm also really want to make sure that the folks here tonight know about the really strong support that we've seen for this project at the Jackson County Parks Plus Rec Department, and then with our elected leaders, the county executive, Frank White, the Jackson County legislature, the partners over at the KCATA, CEO Robbie Mackinnon, and all those folks have really been strong supporters of the Rock Island, and we appreciate that. Also want to note that the Jackson County Rock Island project is one part of a bigger eventual vision that Matt mentioned to extend the Rock Island further east across the state of Missouri. There's a separate project that's going on right now to keep the Rock Island going from Windsor over almost to St. Louis. Want to give a shout out to Greg Harris and the Missouri Rock Island Trail folks who have been working on that for several years. There is a recent news this year that the Missouri State Parks has tentatively agreed to accept that trail corridor and start developing, pending a fundraising campaign that Bike Walk KC is supporting, along with our colleagues at local advocacy groups around the state. So stay tuned for information on that. So I'm going to look at a couple of questions we have here and throw them over to Matt. One question is around the adjacent property owners. Folks are curious if there were any hesitations or questions from property owners along the trail, and if so, how did that go? How did you address those questions or concerns?
Sure. It hasn't been as controversial with neighboring property owners as I thought it would be. We've really had a lot of support from our neighbors, to be quite honest with you. So, obviously there's been a few folks here and there that have had concerns or issues with the project. And typically it has to do with the fact that this has been sitting for nearly 40 years. And so a lot of folks kind of feel like it's part of their backyard. They see us back there clearing and cutting down trees, which unfortunately is necessary for some of this project. But we're doing what we can to kind of limit that as much as possible and be respectful of our neighbors. I guess we've been lucky in that respect that most folks have been supportive. And and the ones that don't, for the most part, haven't had major gripes with the project. It's just kind of, you're cutting down that big old tree that's been there for 30 years, or, things like that. We also have a lot of encroachment along the corridor, which I think has been challenging for people because they don't know, people kind of don't understand what the status of the railroad is, right? It's been sitting here for 40 years and there's been no trains running on it. So is it abandoned? Who owns it? Do I own it? And there's a lot of confusion there. And so, both when we purchased it, that's something that's a conversation we've had to have a lot, right? Is that, well, we're going to maintain it. We're going to be responsive to your needs. You don't have to try and call the Union Pacific Railroad, who, won't answer your calls and do anything about it. So just kind of growing pains more than anything. And for the most part, we've had a lot more positive feedback than we have negative. So I don't know if that answers the question, but hopefully it helps.
Yeah, I think it does. There's a question about, lots of questions about connections in to and from the trail, and I think you answered a lot of those in the presentation. One in particular is the Blue River Trail, which I was actually just on recently. There's a new section. If you ride the Brush Creek Trail east from the plaza, it now ends at the Blue River, and there's a brand new section that goes north towards the stadiums, and it gets really close to the stadiums. Matt, do you have any sort of an idea of when that Blue River Trail might actually connect directly into the Rock Island?
Unfortunately, I don't have I can't provide a strong timetable for that. What I mentioned in my presentation that we had walked an alignment that seemed doable. We walked that alignment with folks from Kansas City, Missouri Planning Department, Kansas City Parks, a few others. I think we had independents there, and I think some from Bike Walk KC as well. So we've looked at the alignment of a possible trail. The problem is that on that alignment, you've got to cross an active freight railroad line, and you've got to cross 435. So kind of similar to how I was discussing the Greenwood Connector, ideally we have a trail connection, a connection that's off street, or if it's on street, it's protected, something that folks feel comfortable on, and that they, all ages and abilities type of situation. So it's hard to say. One thing I will mention is that we do have a very good relationship with Kansas City, Missouri Parks Department, and we have worked with them on the Little Blue Trace Trail. And I mentioned that because this would be a project that I think we would look at partnering with them on, and either splitting a match for a federal grant, or kind of working together to fund that project generally. The relationship that we've built through the work on the Little Blue Trace, I think, sets a really good groundwork for working to connect our trail systems in Kansas City. So I guess one last thing I'll mention is we also looked at some on-street routes. Those aren't great either, unfortunately, because there's 6 train tracks when you use leads. You go through leads. So it's a possibility, but again, that area just has a number of obstacles, challenges that are not easy to surmount. So we'll have to look to the future for that connection, but do know that we're working on it, and we're looking at how we can make that happen in the future.
Excellent. That's great. A few questions in the chat. Is there proper bicycle parking at the sports complex? The answer is still sadly no, although I know we and other folks have talked to the Royals since we've now done 3 or 4 of these Bike for the Rails events that have been really popular. And the team is aware of the issue, and we've had some good discussions with them. We were hoping to maybe get that resolved this year, but with everything that's going on right now, that's kind of fallen by the wayside. But I think the community as well as the teams themselves know that better bike parking at the stadiums is needed. Another one is what can individuals do to move these visions forward? So it's my impression is that there's a lot of good support with political leaders and elected officials with the overall concept, but I'm curious, Matt, if you had any specific things or specific projects where it would be helpful for individuals to speak up and advocate for support.
Sure. Well, you know, it's a little bit wonky and a little bit in the weeds, but typically we have to apply for federal funding in order to build these trail systems that we have. That's how the vast majority of trails in our region have been built, through federal funding. And we receive federal funding through an application process at the Mid-America Regional Council. And when we do that, those projects typically are shared. Mid-America Regional Council makes those projects available for public comment. And so going there and stating your support for these projects, whether it's my project, this one, or another project that Jackson County is doing, or maybe it's Kansas City, Missouri, or somebody else in the region, you can go support the projects that you care about when they are applying for federal funding, and that does make a difference. You know, the other part is, you know, I know there's a lot of advocacy and outreach happening right now to our elected officials and to others in power. But, you know, anytime, you know, you don't have to just call our elected officials when you're upset about something or when there's an urgent matter that needs to be addressed, like right now. You writing to them and saying, you know, I ride the Rock Island Trail and I love it, and I want nothing more than to connect through to the Katy Trail. You know, that our legislators, I know, they read those messages and they listen to those messages, and that message will be received. And that helps us, because then when I want to apply for a federal grant and I go to the legislature and I say, hey, I need match. I need a 20% match for a $2 million project. That's not small change, right? So having that support from the community and voicing that support to our elected leaders does make a difference. So I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, you know, Matt, that's a really good point. I think a lot of times elected officials only hear from advocates when they're upset about something, and we don't always remember to take the time to say thank you when they do something that we like, and that's really important as well. So one last thing, there's been a few questions and comments about transit to the stadiums today, and David from KCATA notes that there is the number 47 bus route that runs from downtown to the Blue Ridge Crossing, and that does stop near the stadiums, and so that is an option right now. And hopefully, as Matt was explaining earlier, that there will be much better transit service to the stadiums in the future. So we're running close to time, so I want to get you all out of here and on to happy hour or dinner or whatever y'all are doing next tonight. So I'm going to turn it back over to Liz to wrap everything up and send us away. So Liz, feel free to take it away.
3 months on Zoom and I'm still looking for my unmute button. All right, so thank you all for coming. We really appreciate seeing Matt today, and we're glad to have you here. You can, we recorded this today. And so we will have this up in our virtual event archive, which is a recent development on our website. I will send you that link, as well as links to some of the topics that were mentioned today, some of the details that you might like to look up on your own for future reference. I'll send all of those to you in a follow-up email tomorrow. Another thing that I'll add in that follow-up email is we've got some upcoming events slated for Bike Walk KC. So next Tuesday, the virtual Maintain Your Ride is a bike maintenance class that we're doing in partnership with Johnson County Library. That's really exciting. This is a monthly offering that we do, and we know that the bike boom has happened, and so now everybody and their neighbor has a new bike, and we want to make sure that you get to keep rolling on your own. So home bike maintenance, DIY stuff, we will teach you that next Tuesday. Next Thursday, Trevice Pendleton at Vireo Landscape Architects is going to talk about community engagement in the new normal, including some thoughts on intersection of systemic racism with the urban planning field. This is going to be a really exciting talk. We're excited to have Trevice, and this should be interesting to not just planning folks, but anybody who is interested in reaching the people that we need to inform our work. And then later this summer, we have upcoming bike and pedestrian projects with the City of Independence that will connect with the Rock Island Corridor. So keep all of those in mind. We've got some exciting stuff coming up with that, and we're looking forward to all of it. So thank you to our sponsors, and I'm gonna share my screen again. Well, thank you to our funders, wherever my screen went. We could not do this work without the organizations and philanthropists that believe in us. And we also couldn't do this work without all of you. So we appreciate each and every one of our members and our donors who believe in this work and who give to it financially, who are our friends, who write letters to their representatives, who volunteer for us, and who speak up for us and speak up for better biking, walking, and places for people in Kansas City at the dinner table or in your neighborhood group, wherever it is. We appreciate all of you. Thank you so much again for joining us today. We appreciate seeing all of you here, and keep an eye out for that follow-up email coming up tomorrow. Good night, everyone.